All right, so you're at a position where you want to start selecting the tile for your shower, and with all the options out there, it's very confusing as to what you need to select. And in this episode, we're going to break it down, make it very simple for you guys. Stay tuned. There are a lot of things that you need to look at when you're selecting a tile for a shower. And I'm going to focus on performance here because that's probably the most important thing you need to consider other than the design, because that's what's going to tell you how long that this shower is going to last. Right off the bat, we're going to start off with probably one of the most important things is the water absorption of the tile. If we're working in a wet environment, as obviously we are in the case of a shower, you need to make sure that if you're selecting a tile, it needs to have a water absorption of 0.5 or less. And let me repeat, it has to have 0.5 or less, and it has to be designated by the manufacturer to say that. So if it's a porcelain tile, just because somebody might say this is a porcelain tile does not mean that it has that level of water absorption. It has to be tested. And this testing has been standardized by the American National Standards Institute. So that's where that number comes from. It's not just made up. So the two types of tiles that you're going to see have that is obviously porcelain tiles or glazed ceramic tiles. Yes, ceramic tiles can have that, but they have to be glazed. And what happens is that glaze becomes a barrier, an impenetrable barrier to water. So that's another situation, and I'm sure you've seen some of the older homes will have glazed ceramic tile on the walls, and they're perfectly fine. So that's where we're going to start off with. The next important thing is the coefficient of friction of the tiles. And that might not be necessarily a factor on the walls, but it will definitely be a factor for the floors, because the last thing you want is to slip and fall in the shower or as you're getting in the shower. That's where the water is, and that's where you're going to have a lot of danger. So you need to make sure that the floor tile that you select has a coefficient of friction of 0.42 as designated by the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI. And that 0.42 is the minimum standard that should be there. So if you see a tile and it has that 0.42, but you're not necessarily comfortable with it, you have to then decide, okay, let's go for something a little bit more. There's a lot of tiles that have a 0.6 coefficient of friction. So it all depends on the situation. If you're putting tile in a shower in an elderly's home, obviously you want to make sure, or in their shower, you want to make sure that that coefficient of friction is a lot more, because they're more likely to slip and fall in those situations. So again, you have to look at all these things. If you look at it from so that's the ANSI specification, 0.42 minimum. If you have importing tiles from Europe, and they may not have the ANSI specification, they might have what's called the ISO specification, and that's a little bit different. The testing is a little bit different. What you want to look for, make it very easy for you, is R11 to R13. Any of those numbers in between, you're in a pretty good spot. R13 is like the best in terms of lip resistance. R11 is the bare minimum. Okay, so the other thing is to consider when you're selecting walls, tile for the shower walls or anywhere, is the glaze that's on the tile. So you can definitely get an unglazed tiles for a shower, but you're gonna have much tougher time keeping it clean, especially if there's some texture on that tile, because that's going to take in dirt's going to sit in there over time, calcium deposits, all these kind of things. So getting a glazed tile on the walls is a sure thing when it comes to maintenance, makes it easier to maintain, and it always has some sort of that gloss clean look to it too. So obviously, hygiene is a very important thing in the shower too, so this will make it a lot easier. The other thing when it comes to just that I have touched on in a separate video, and I'll put a link for that as well, is that the glaze on that tile, you need to also look at reputable manufacturer that has the glaze polished to the right amount. Because if you get a glazed tile that has not been polished to a minimum of 90%, what happens is that that glaze will have pores in it. So a lot of these cheap manufacturers, they will just polish the tile about 60% or so, sometimes even less. And what happens, that leaves pores inside that tile that's going to be exposed. And so what happens is that obviously you're in a shower, water, dirt, everything splashing, and that'll get absorbed into the tile over a period of time, and you start to see that tile discolor. So the polishing aspect of that glaze is also an important factor. You can go through all of these and if you don't. So how do you know that? Work with this individual who understands this. In our tile shop, for instance, just to throw it out, we are looking at those factors when we're looking at any supplier we're looking at. We are making sure that that has been done and there's proof for that by the manufacturer. So that's an important thing. So the next thing is, like, for instance, shower jams. You know, what do you use? You can use tile for shower jams. These are basically like your curb, you know, the step that you put in to go in. Sometimes that will get tiled. Or the side of your niche. A niche is like an indentation in the wall that you put your shampoos and everything inside it. You can have the borders that is made of tile, the same tiles on the wall. Or the other option is you can put a natural stone. The most common stone that you might see is quartz. Why? Because it's polished, it has no water absorption, it's easier to maintain, you never have to, it's almost as easy to maintain as a porcelain tile. So that tends to sit as like a form of threshold or a border around the shower, and you can get it in all kinds of colors and it looks really nice. So I tend to see that a lot happening in showers, and we do as well. The other thing is also when it going back to coefficient of friction, if you're having whether it's a linear drain, which is an offset linear drain on the side of your shower, or the drain is in the center, you have sort of two different options. You know, you have the mosaic tiles, or you can put a large format tile, like for instance a 12 by 24 or 24 by 24, or even bigger. The thing you want to also consider is that you're not getting sort of a glazed polished tile on that floor, because they're not going to have a very good coefficient of friction. So when you're picking large format tiles, especially, make sure you go for something that has that coefficient of friction so that you don't have issues when it comes to slipping. Tiling a ceiling is something that a lot of people ask about, is do I need to tile my ceiling? I'll make it very easy for you. It is an optional thing, but in only certain applications. If you have a bulkhead, that bulkhead lowers the ceiling. What that means that, and then your shower head, the steam and the water splashes, everything can easily get on that ceiling. So if you have a bulkhead, absolutely you need to tile your ceiling. If you don't have a bulkhead, or you opt in to remove your bulkhead, and that's a possibility, then you don't have to have a tile in your ceiling, because the water is never going to go that high, and it's just going to exit out of your shower area anyway. So, and if you want to kind of keep a peace of mind, you can always paint the bathroom with a mold resistant paint, and also make sure the drywall installed there is a dent shield, or at minimum a mold resistant type of drywall, and obviously waterproofing is done as well on top of those substrates. So to make it kind of easier when it comes to what kind of tiles to look for, as a summary, you can do porcelain tiles. Make sure you consider the water absorption. That is a true porcelain. You can do glazed ceramic tiles, but remember, only for walls. And ceramic tiles, based on their breakage strength, they're not very suited for floors, so you always want to keep them on the walls. And you do have that protection with the glaze they have when it comes to water absorption, and you can get them in all kinds of vivid colors. They can look really nice. Then there's glass. Glass is going to be on the wall, and typically gets used like an accent strip, or let's say like a background for your niche. So that's another thing. And then when it comes to natural stone, stay away from like things like marble, where it has more porosity, or other types of natural stones that have that. The most, you know, the nicest looking and also the most economical one that you can use is quartz, and that's becoming very popular right now too. So thank you very much. I hope you got a lot from this video, and look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Lots more information to come.